You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, like every other day, we have a special guest. We're going to be talking to Terry Tucker today. He has an awesome story that he's going to share with us. He has a great story with sports, with business, the whole 9 yards. So first, I want to welcome Mr. Terry and say, how you doing today, sir?
I'm great, Shemaya. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
We're going to learn about you being an athlete, man, because you play NCAA Division I basketball, and that's pretty awesome, man, because every athlete who has the opportunity to play in the NCAA, that's a privilege, and that's awesome. But you did Division I, so that means you had some skills, man. So let's first learn a bit about you. Where you from?
So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. You can't tell this from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I played college basketball at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. I've got a brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame. And then another brother who was 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So I sort of joked that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on in front of you in that. So graduated from the Citadel, moved home to find a job. This was long before the internet was available. And, you know, I was all excited to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I look back now and realize how little I knew about business just because I had a degree. But fortunately, I was able to find that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. But unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next three and a half years as I helped my mom care for my father and my grandfather, my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. And then I guess from a professional point of view, I've really had quite a few jobs. I was in marketing with Wendy's, as I said. Then I became a hospital administrator. Then I did a huge pivot in my life and became a police officer and worked undercover narcotics. I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator, started my own school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball. I've been a motivational speaker. 2020, I became an author. But for the last 10 years, I've been battling this rare form of cancer. And then I guess to round it out, my wife and I have been married for 28 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Well, thank her for her service and thank you for being an inspiration, because we're going to learn about your battles that you had to deal with your health, but also the fact that you had so many different jobs. I mean, these are like a jump from a jump. And let's talk about when you became an officer, because I think that's pretty awesome. And thank you for your service, what you did as a first responder. How was that job? Because I'm interested. Why did you want to go that route, and what inspired you to do that?
Actually, it was my grandfather. My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. So it was in Chicago during Prohibition, when alcohol was outlawed in the United States, during the Great Depression, late 20s, early 30s. And when the gangs, Al Capone and his gang and things like that were shooting up the town, and he was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad always remembered the stories that my grandmother told about that knock on the door of, Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, please come with us. Your husband's been shot. And trauma medicine in 1935 was a whole lot different than trauma medicine now. So when I expressed an interest in going into law enforcement, my dad was like, absolutely not. You're going to go to college. You're going to major in business. You're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live in the suburbs. But that's what my dad wanted me to do. And so, as I mentioned, when I graduated from college, my dad was sick. He was dying of cancer. So I had two choices. I could say, sorry, Dad, I'm going to blaze my own trail and go into law enforcement, or out of love and respect for him, I could go into business. And that's what I did. So if you look at my resume, my first two jobs are in business. And then I sort of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited until my father passed away And then I followed my own dreams into law enforcement. So that's kind of how it was always something that was in my heart, but it wasn't something I was able to pursue until really my father passed away.
And being able to do that and have that success as a professional, did you have any challenges that you had to face during your time as an officer?
Just starting out, I was a 37-year-old rookie police officer, which by most accounts is pretty old to get into that line of work. I sort of joke that I took a whole lot more Tylenol in the police academy than certainly my younger counterparts did. Ran a beat for a number of years, 4 or 5 years in a marked car and a uniform, and then switched over to the drug unit. Had a great opportunity to get involved on the SWAT team as a hostage negotiator, and worked with some great people, had some great experiences, but had to really develop a whole different set of skills because, as a police officer, 99% of what you do is face to face with another individual, whether you're pulling them over to give them a ticket or whether you're, responding on a radio run for a fight or a domestic run. Most of everything you do is face to face. But as negotiators, we were not with that person. We had to figure things out based on what people were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. So those kind of skills were something that, we really focused on. We trained every month as a group. We worked with a psychologist to kind of, did you think about this? Maybe the issue with this person is that, and things like that. So I learned a great deal about the importance of trust. Trust is very important in that relationship. We never lied to anybody. I mean, people would say, hey, I'll come out, but I don't want to go to jail. And we would have to tell them, well, when you do come out, you are going to jail. But we would deflect the conversation to something more positive in that regard. And one of the reasons we never lied to people, and there was a very good chance we would negotiate with them again down the road, a year from now or 2 years from now. I mean, the problem may have been, they've had a big fight with their mother and barricaded themselves, and now we're here. Well, as long as your mother's still alive, you still may have that next fight with her, and we may be back at the scene doing the same thing all over again.
And once again, if you listen to I Am Refocused Radio right now, or you tune in, we're talking to our special guest, Terry Tucker. And speeding up, when you are battling this illness that you're battling right now, and you have this mindset that I can feel it of just positivity, but also discipline and having that go get it attitude. You have 4 truths. Share with that with the audience and how that keeps you focused.
Sure. So I've been fighting this rare form of melanoma for the last 10 years, and it has seen me be on a drug for 5 years that gave me the severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week. I had my foot amputated in 2018, and then my leg amputated in 2020. And during that 10-year battle with cancer, I've developed, as you said, these 4 truths, and I have them on a Post-it note right here on my desk. I see them multiple times every day, and they get reinforced, and they're just one sentence. So here they are. Number 1 is you need to control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. Number 2 is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined individual. Number 3 is more of a legacy truth. I think it's important for all of us to sort of think about the end game, regardless of where we are in our life right now. And number 3 is this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. So I use these truths. I mean, I call them sort of the bedrock of my soul. They're just a good thing, good ideas in which to base a good life off of.
And with that mindset, how have you been able to share your story with others, especially those who might be going through similar difficulty as you?
Really 2 ways. As I mentioned back in 2020, I wrote a book, and it's not a book about cancer. It's called Sustainable Excellence: The 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. There are a few stories from my life with cancer, but a lot of them are just people that I knew or traits that I saw in myself or other people that I included in the book. And the other way I get the message out is through doing radio shows and podcasts like this. I always say it's good people like you, Shemaiah, that allow me to come on, and hopefully between our conversation, we're going to make a difference in somebody's life that hears this. And if we do that, for me, today's been a really good day.
Now, when people are going through these uncertain times that we're in, it's so many distractions, so many things that pull us away from our goals and our focus on trying to live our life in a productive way. You have the opportunity to touch people's lives through your book that you mentioned. And with that platform, what are some of the tools that you hope people can develop after reading your book?
So, I look at it this way. We are all going to experience pain in our lives. And it doesn't have to be, a cancer like mine or even a chronic illness of any kind. It could be as simple as you flunk a test at school, or you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you don't get the promotion at work that you think you deserve. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, suffering is optional. Suffering is what you do with that pain. Do you take that pain and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want people to feel sorry for you? Now, you're listening to me right now, and if you could see me, you would see that there's no S on my chest. I don't have a K. I'm going through cancer treatment right now, so I have bad days. There are days I get down. There are days I cry. There are days I feel sorry for myself. And when I get to those points, I think about two stories that I'll just relate to you real quick. One is about a study that I read about that occurred in the 1950s at Johns Hopkins University out on the East Coast. It was a very simple study. A professor took rats, trust me, this is going somewhere, took rats and put them in a tank of water that was over their head. And he wanted to see how long these rats would tread water. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes before they were getting ready to drown. And just as they were ready to go under, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, let them rest for a while, and then he put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. All I can do is 15 minutes and I'm going to drown. Second time around, I can tread water for 60 hours, which says to me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. We all have to have hope. We all have to think that or be working towards our lives getting better. And I know that's hard, especially in this time of COVID, but think about the things you're doing in life and think about how you're moving towards a more hopeful life. So that's number one. And number two is just how much more our physical bodies are capable of than we think they are. I have and this is the second story. I have a friend who's a former Navy SEAL in the military, and the SEALs talk about their 40% rule, which basically says that if you're at the end of your rope, that you can't go on, you can't do another, run another step or do another push-up, that you're only at 40% of your maximum and you still have 60% left to give to yourself. So whenever we get into these situations, and we all do, we're human beings, we're not Superman. Whenever we get into these situations, just realize your human body, your physical body can do so much more than you ever thought it could possibly do.
So how have you personally been able to take those tool sets that you have taken throughout your life's journey and actually take action and practice that until you see progress?
I think one of the big ways for me is what I learned being part of team sports. I started playing basketball when I was 9 years old and played all the way up till I was 21, till I graduated from college. And one of the things that I think team sports teaches us is the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And, I look back and think, when I was on a team, if I didn't do my job, not only was I letting myself down, but I'm letting my teammates down, my coaches down, my fans down, the parents down, et cetera. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life. And as I mentioned, I've been dealing with this cancer for 10 years. And right now I have tumors in my lungs and I'm on a clinical trial drug that more than likely is not going to save my life. But it very well may save the life of somebody 5 years from now or 10 years from now. based on all the data that the doctors are gleaning from my blood tests and my scans and things like that. And for me, that's part of being part of something that's bigger than me. I won't know the people who what I'm going through now will help, but my life will have that much more of a meaning because I stayed with this, because I stayed the course, and I actually did something that's going to help somebody who I'm never even going to know.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. We're talking to our special guest today, Terry Tucker. And I read something in the information that you sent me in the email, and there's one thing that really stuck out to me when you wrote that when you used to recruit in Cincinnati Police Academy, there was a phrase that any of your classmates, if they needed some kind of encouragement, motivation, or some kind of support, they will respond to an answer with a loud 84. So when they say 84, explain to the audience, what does that mean? Why is it so significant?
So our defensive tactics instructor was a super individual. I mean, we did some amazing things that I don't think any of us thought we could do. One of them was to run a marathon. But very early on in the academy, he instituted this phrase called motivational check. And so anybody that was having a bad day, or, I'm just having a hard time getting through this, or I'm not getting how we're doing this procedure and learning to defend ourselves and stuff like that. So basically, if you were having a bad day, you could just yell out motivational check. And the rest of the class would respond, as you said, with a number. We were the 84th recruit class. So we would just yell out 84 to let the person know that, hey, we're all hurting. But we're all going to get through this together. Nobody's by themselves. Nobody's on their own. We're all in this together, and we'll get through this together. So that's kind of where motivational check came from and why we responded the way we did with our class number.
I really like the idea because that can be with family, that can be with friends, that can be with just a business professional partner. Because like you just said, a lot of people, they can be bringing their troubles with them wherever they go, and they don't have a way to escape. It can just keep building and building to where it just damages a lot of relationships. How important is it for people to address those situations where they are going through something? How important and how necessary is it for them to act sooner rather than later?
It's incredibly important. And I certainly would encourage, and this is certainly something I learned as a police officer, and maybe more specifically on the SWAT team, because if you think about it, if you're talking to me as a hostage negotiator and your house or your building is surrounded, by the tactical team with, guys with rifles and things like that, you're probably going through the worst day of your life. And, people that have problems, that have issues, I always wanted my life to be defined based on the decisions that I made, not the ones that somebody else made for me or the ones that didn't. So if you're having some tough times and don't feel like, hey, I've got to be, macho, or I've got to be tough, or I've got to handle this. Don't feel that way. If you need help, reach out for that help. I mean, as law enforcement, as first responders, we saw things that most people certainly don't want to see, and probably we shouldn't have seen. I mean, they leave a scar on you. But if you're in that situation where you need help, reach out for that. We always encourage people to reach out and get that help. And I guess probably as importantly, if people are listening to this and they think somebody is maybe wanting to harm themselves or something like that, and they don't know what to do with that, ask that person. And you're not going to, if they're not going to harm themselves, they're going to look at you like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to hurt myself. But if they are, maybe you're opening the door for them to talk to you and to kind of depress or not depress, but to kind of compress all that anger and frustration that they're experiencing. And by asking them if they're going to hurt themselves or if they need help or how you can help them, you're not going to put the idea in their mind where they might actually act on that. So don't feel that, well, if I say something, I may give them that suggestion. That's not the way it works. If they're not going to do it, they're going to come back at you with, no, you're nuts, you're crazy. And that's happened to me a lot as a negotiator, where we weren't really sure why we were there. We weren't really sure what the problem was. So you had to start somewhere. So you would pick a rabbit hole and let's go down this rabbit hole and see if we're on the right track. And if we weren't, they would yell at us. It's like, no, you idiot. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, you come out of that rabbit hole, you pick another one. Well, then tell me why we're here. How can we help you, etc. So don't ever feel that, one, if you need the help, there's something wrong with you. We all need help from time to time. I need help. Shemai needs help. Everybody needs help. So don't feel that you shouldn't reach out. And secondly, if you're someone who feels somebody else may need help, go ahead and ask them and open the door so that they can get help if they need it.
Terry, when you have these opportunities to, I feel like you're coaching me right now, but when you have the opportunities to share your personal story with others, I've read also you have faith. How has faith personally helped you just keep your head above water and not give up?
Yeah, people have asked me that. I've always had what I call my 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. And those things have certainly helped me get through certainly this 10-year battle with cancer, but other things that I've had in my life. And we're great as a society for, anytime we want to start something and we butt up against a little bit of an obstacle, it's like, I started something. Oh, that's hard. I don't want to do that. And we kind of have to back off. And so we're great about when we have to back off or we decide we're going to back off, we want to blame somebody. We want to blame our parents or our boss or our station in life, whatever that is. But I've had people ask me, who do you blame for getting cancer? You've got to blame somebody. And I'm like, do you blame God? It's like, no. And I sort of joke about it. It's like, I don't think God got up on a Tuesday morning, checked his to-do list and said, Terry Tucker today, he's going to get cancer. I don't believe that in the least. But I do believe that God has given me the things that I've needed, the strength, the courage, the motivation, the determination, the resilience to continue to move forward. And I'll be honest with you, Shemai, there were days when I initially I was on a drug called interferon that I mentioned earlier, and I took a weekly interferon injection. And interferon gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years, because I took those injections for 5 years. And there were days I felt so sick. And I got to the point where I was so sick of being sick that I prayed to die. I was just, please, God, take me out of this. I can't keep doing this. But he didn't. He didn't take me out of this. And I remember my oncologist a few months ago showed me my CAT scan from back in 2020 when I had my leg amputated and I found out I had these tumors in my lungs. And I don't have any medical background, so I don't really know how to read a CAT scan, but he showed me my lungs and I had fluid all around the space of my lungs. I had these big tumors inside my lungs. And I looked at him like, how was I alive with that? And he kind of shook his head and he said, I don't know. I don't know how you were alive, which said to me that God's not done with me yet. And, when I die and how I die, way above my pay grade. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. But my faith has gotten me through this. And I know a lot of people don't have faith, but you've got to believe in something. You've got to have people around you that care about you, that love you, that want to uplift you and things like that. So faith has been a huge part in getting me through certainly these last 10 years with cancer.
Once again, you've been listening to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest, Terry Tucker. And if you want to go to his website right now. That is motivationalcheck.com, and get his book while you're there. It's Sustainable Excellence. And I hate when time goes by so fast, man. But before we let you go, if you wanted to say something to somebody and that someone is somebody who's been through a lot, maybe they're on the verge of giving up, what would you say personally to them to give them a little boost of motivation?
I'll close with a story, if you don't mind. So I've always been a big fan of Westerns growing up. My mom and dad used to let me stay up and watch, Bonanza and Wild Wild West and Gunsmoke and things like that. 1993, the movie Tombstone came out. You very well may have seen it. It was a huge blockbuster. Starred Val Kilmer as a man by the name of John Doc Holliday and Kurt Russell as a man by the name of Wyatt Earp. Now, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were 2 living, breathing human beings who walked on the face of the earth. They're not made up characters for the movie. And Doc was called Doc because he was a dentist by trade, but pretty much Doc Holliday was a gunslinger and a card shark. And Wyatt Earp, his whole life, had been a lawman. And these 2 men from obviously entirely opposite backgrounds formed this very close friendship. And in the end of the movie, Doc Holliday is dying at a hospital in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from my house. The real Doc Holliday died in that hospital, and he's buried in the Glenwood Springs Cemetery. And Wyatt, at this point in his life, is destitute. He has no money, he has no job, he has no prospects for a job. But every day he comes to play cards with Doc, and the two men pass the time. And in this scene at the very end of the movie, the two men are talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, I was in love with my cousin when I was young, but she joined a convent over the affair. But she's all that I ever wanted. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life. And get on with living yours. Shemaiah, you and I both probably know people that are kind of sitting back and we're like, what, when this happens in my life, I'll have a normal life. When that happens, I'll have a successful life. When this happens, I'll have a significant life. What I would say to your audience is this: don't wait. Don't wait for life to come to you. Get out there, find the reason you were born, find the reason you were put on the face of this earth, and live that reason. Because if you do, I'm going to promise you two things. At the end of your life, you're going to be a whole lot happier, and you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
Those listening right now, IamRefocusRadio.com. You can go there and listen to our podcast, previous shows, and this one today. And also go visit our guest. His website is motivationalcheck.com. And make sure you get the book, Sustainable Excellence. I love everything you just said. I'm going to listen to this whenever I just need to pick me up. And I hope anyone listening to this right now, you share it to anybody that you know might be going through some things, because we all have to have some kind of help from somebody. We can't be our own superhero. Sometimes we just got to get some help. So once again, I want to say thank you to you, Terry Tucker, taking time out of your busy schedule, talking to us today.
Thank you, Shemaiah. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Hey, it's Shemaiah Reed with I Am Refocused Radio. Make sure you go to IamRefocusRadio.com to listen to today's episode. Once again, like we always say, keep God first, stay focused, and peace.
I Am Refocused Radio is brought to you by Foo 4 Star and Holy Crab. Foo 4 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try. You won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.